Mastering the Whole Child with Teacher Miriam. Today we look at the effect of early childhood experiences on later personality development in adulthood. And so, like we've said previously, childhood or early childhood is not a phase that we look at as we hope for more serious stages in development. Early childhood is a stage that is to be taken seriously. It's a phase that is complete on its own. Children are not living waiting to live. Children are already living. And so it's important how what we expose them to and what kind of experiences we allow them to go through in their early childhood. Childhood experiences have an enduring effect on an individual's later outcomes in life. And so when we look at childhood experiences, we are looking at experiences that could affect a person's development, whether socially, cognitively, emotionally, or even physically later in life. If a child is constantly sitting in front of a screen, for instance, and not in an environment where they can exercise or be involved physically. So we are looking at a child who is likely later to want to lead a sedentary lifestyle, and this is something we all know what it could be associated with, the lifestyle diseases and such kind of things. Just the other day, my son told me that, Mama, I thought all ladies keep dreadlocks. He actually told me that growing up, he thought that he couldn't differentiate between braided hair and dreadlocks. And I looked at him and I found that interesting. And just before he could finish with that, he also told me that he thought that all ladies do not eat 3 square meals. And I looked at him and I smiled because I knew where he was getting that from. Having grown up with a mother who has dreaded hair, then that formed his perspective towards life. So it's important for us to know that experiences that are shaped by the people who are around, caregivers, parents, or even educators, those around the child as the child grows up, give the child the lens through which they view life. So without telling my child anything, now he's a teen, but he's telling me about how growing up he assumed that every lady should, every mother actually said, Mommy, I thought all mothers keep dreadlocks. And I couldn't even differentiate between dreadlocks and hairpiece. And again, because he's seen me, maybe growing up, he found me practicing what is called intermittent fasting. And so he thought, no mother takes breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Well, whether that is good exposure, I think is story for another day. But hearing that from my child made me think through and take seriously the experiences that children are exposed to in early childhood. That now a teen would look back and think about how he thought, how he viewed life is shaped by his mother, just proves the fact that the experiences that young children go through as they grow up definitely shape their outlook later in life and even the development of their personalities. So as parents and as caregivers and as educators, we need to be very careful what kind of experiences we expose young children to. There are positive experiences which of course have a positive impact on children's outcome later in life, and there are also negative experiences that could have adverse effects on a child's development. Which are these positive experiences? At this point, I will still emphasize again that childhood is not a phase. It's not a phase that we watch as children go through, and then now we prepare ourselves to become serious with bringing or with taking care of them later in life as they get into adolescence or as they get into teenagehood. All the efforts and all the energies need to be to be put into practice right at early childhood, because it is in early childhood that these children are learning to form attachments. For instance, attachment with caregivers. If the child is having a caregiver who is not responsive, a caregiver who just lets the child be, doesn't quite care or respond to a child's needs, then that definitely will affect how the child later turns out in life. So we are looking first at some few positive experiences in early childhood, experiences like a good attachment when a child has a healthy relationship with a caregiver, be it the parent, be it a nanny, be it a teacher in early year education. So if a child is securely attached to their primary caregiver, definitely this fosters good development and good growth. Because we all know from birth to around 8 years, this is when a child's brain is developing. And so if a child is having an experience that is positive in terms of attachment, then this encourages good brain development. Another example of a positive early childhood experience is a feeling of belonging in family. So if a child knows that I belong to this family, I am loved, I am cared for. The people taking care of me are responsive to my needs. The child doesn't cry and is led to cry and is left maybe with wet diapers, left unfed. If the child is having an experience that makes them feel wanted and have a sense of belonging, this has a positive attitude towards how their brain forms. And looking at the issues of caregiving and the issues of attachments is also the environment within. It's important also to look at the environment within which the child is growing. So if a child is growing in an environment that encourages play, an environment that is safe, an environment that is clean, this definitely again will affect how the child looks at life in future. So if the child is growing in an environment where they are allowed to play, to exercise, this fosters their physical development and of course affects their social development, because if they're allowed to play with peers or play with other children, play with the adults in their space, then as they are doing this, it is building their social development. When we look at it again at issues of engagement, where the child is a child engaged? Can the child be allowed to do small tasks like picking up after themselves, packing toys together after playing? That sense of engagement, when the child is involved in something bigger than themselves, it helps the child's brain to develop. And much later in life, then this child will be able to take care of the environment within which they are growing up. So these are some of the positive experiences that a child can have when they are growing up. There are so many others, like just even being encouraged and being listened to, being given space to express their feelings and not suppressed, not told to keep quiet when other people are talking. This helps the child later in life not to struggle with self-expression and not to struggle with expressing their needs. So generally, positive experiences growing up involves nurturing care, where a child is connecting well with their caregivers, growing in a safe and clean environment. It also involves nutrition. What kind of foods is this child being fed with? Because we cannot later in life start limiting or start dictating the kinds of food that a child should take, especially maybe when they're in their teenage or in their adolescent, while we expose them to certain foods when they were younger. So the kind of food we are giving these children, is it processed food? Is it a lot of snacking? Is it a lot of unhealthy eating? It will definitely form a lens through which this child views nutrition later in life. So all these are kind of experiences. If given to the child in a positive way, then this shapes the child on the right direction as they grow up. We also have negative experiences in early childhood. experiences that, as adults, we may look at it and think these children are too young to even comprehend what is happening. But if a child is suffering distress, neglect, for instance, if a child is not attended to, if a child is left on their own, if a child is not being paid attention to, this is likely to affect how they respond to stress. It can actually build up stress in their lives and make them express adverse reactions towards stress later in life, which we all know again could predispose these children to mental health issues like depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and such kind of things. So neglect is one negative experience in early childhood. We have growing up in a household that is troubled. Like if a child is growing up in a household or being taken care of by a parent or a caregiver who is abusing drugs and such kind of things, an adult who is abusive. So this is a negative experience. And we know children, especially in early childhood, this child may not voice what they're experiencing. But the fact that they are not voicing it and expressing this discomfort does not mean these experiences will not affect their outcome in future. If a child is growing up in an environment that is not safe, where there is no security, this places a lot of stress on the child's young brain and later affects and definitely affects their brain development. And so, to parents, caregivers, and educators, it's important for us to realize that we form the moral compass through which children view life. Children, especially in early years, experience life through the experiences that we give them. And so it's our responsibility as the adults in the lives of these children to make sure that we give children experiences that impact on them positively, experiences that make them look at the world in a good way, experiences that help them to develop their brain, experiences that help them to develop socially and emotionally. Because at the end of the day, our responsibility is to raise up a holistic child, a child who is developing well emotionally, socially, physically, cognitively, and even morally. So, caregivers, educators, and parents, let's be very keen what we expose our children to in their early years, knowing that childhood is not a phase of life, that we watch as we wait to get serious later in life. This is it. Our children are already here with us. They are living. Let's be keen what experiences we expose them to.